Welcome to the Empowered Living Show. This is a show that is geared towards women, but it's also, it's great for anybody. And it's dedicated to helping you discover the secrets to living an empowered life. And my guests offer their story of their challenges and their struggle to success, and how they overcame the challenges and how they became empowered, and how they now help others. So I'm your host, Lisa myself. I'm the founder of Famana, and I specialize in helping mostly health and empowerment coaches boost their visibility and learn strategies, magnetize clients, and increase profits so they can build a successful business feeling energized, feeling balanced, and stress-free, which is what we all want, right?
Mm-hmm.
So make sure to, you can download my free ebook, Double Your Energy. It's a checklist, and it's going to help you feel lighter and think clear and have energy throughout the day. So I am very grateful to my guest tonight, Bere. Did I say that right? Bere Blissenbach. I goofed it. Okay, you can tell us how to pronounce it correctly when you get on. But today the show is about relationships, and it's about how to have peace in your relationship through conflict. And I'm really excited to introduce Bere to you. I'm so bad. So let me just tell you a little bit about her. She's a relationship coach who works with amazing women who are ready to take their relationships to the next level. And instead of responding to relationship conflicts by either arguing or withdrawing, her clients become empowered to use them as a catalyst so that they can have further growth in their relationship and their life. And she's going to be talking to us about how relationships with other people can be a source of, your greatest joy in life, but it can also be your biggest pain. And whenever two or more people interact with each other, relationship conflicts are far from unusual, and they often cause upset in one or all parties. And I'm really interested to hear about this because I'm sure that we've all had conflicts in one relationship or another, and sometimes they can be so confusing because you don't know where it's coming from. And people, they grow up differently and they have different triggers. So I'm really interested to hear about this. She says that most people respond to relationship conflicts by either arguing angrily or by withdrawing into themselves. And while this is understandable, this pattern does not get them what they want most, which is feeling heard, understood, loved, and feeling peaceful. So the way out of this dilemma is to change the response to relationship conflict. And this is what she's going to be teaching us. Mm-hmm. And once we begin to use the relationship conflicts as a catalyst for growth through the proven system that she has, then they become a wonderful opportunity to turn negative relationship patterns into positive ones. So this is super important for all of us because we all interact with people throughout the day. So I'm really excited to introduce you, and I'm sorry, please pronounce your name again for me.
Yeah, Bere.
Bere.
Yeah.
Too. So Bere, thank you so much for being here. And let's start with you talking about how you came to be doing what you're doing today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I've definitely had my own challenges with relationship.
Yeah.
And I'm, married to somebody from another culture. So you have an additional layer of potential misunderstanding. So over time, I think I just had to learn how to deal with differences in a way that both parties feel heard and understood.
Yeah.
And I also love working, around issues of life purpose with people. And what I found is that oftentimes life purpose and relationship kind of coalesce. Yeah. Because this energy of purpose is oftentimes also connected to other things we want in our life, like relationship that actually feels aligned with us.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, that's sort of like a bit the intersection at which I oftentimes work.
Yeah, and it's so true. I mean, we have this passion inside of us to help others because of what we've gone through, and we have some
Mm-hmm.
answers. And
Yes.
so, yeah, so tell us, how do people typically respond to relationship conflicts? How does the scenario usually go, and then how should it go?
Yeah, I think up until now, we oftentimes only see two bad choices modeled. And, if I want to exaggerate a bit, it could be either being the pushover or being the bully. So it's either we're being complacent, getting along with everything, and then not feeling really empowered or authentic.
Yeah.
And that has the advantage of kind of keeping the peace in the relationship and harmony, but internally it's like, breeds resentment and inner conflict.
Yes.
So that's one bad option. And then oftentimes people who've done that for a while are like, no, I'm done with that. I'm not going to do that again. But the only other choice they see is, well, okay, then I'll go to the other side and be the bully.
Right.
And, and it doesn't have to be that negative, but just being a bit more aggressive in terms of arguments and expressing oneself. So that has the advantage of people being in their power and being connected to their strength. However, it creates conflict and resentment on the other side. So it's either way, either, we're unhappy or the partner's unhappy.
Yeah, nobody feels good. It's an icky feeling when there's conflict. It's people tiptoe around. It's like, I remember my mom used to say, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. And, that's kind of how people feel when I guess it's trepidatious when there's conflict. So what do you do?
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to add one more thing. One thing that I've realized is in a lot of couples, you have this pattern where one person is, one pole and the other person the other pole. So one person being sort of like the aggressive one and the other being the one that tries to avoid conflict. And it seems to me that that's maybe a good way to work out that dynamic that we oftentimes carry from our childhood and that hasn't yet become resolved.
Yeah.
But what were you going to say?
Oh no, I'm listening to you. I'm very interested in this because it's, and like you were saying, different cultures, different upbringings, how you were raised, how you're, it all compiles into who we are and how we play our patterns in our life. So so one person in a relationship is normally the person who's quiet and angry inside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the other person is the angry outside.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. So how can you use this conflict as a catalyst?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think before we can look into that, it's important to understand why that's going on.
Yeah.
And I think as a culture, and it doesn't even matter what culture we talk about, as a human culture, I think we haven't really learned how to have a good approach to differences and to arguments and to use our anger in a positive way. So, if we look a bit at history, anger hasn't typically been, a positive force. If we look at, just Game of Thrones as an example of, I mean, that's basically our history, right? So we're just now at the point where we can learn to be more in an authentic relationship and where we can be in our power, but also allow others to be in their power at the same time and move from having power over somebody or where somebody else has power over us to having the power to do something, to be vulnerable, to be authentic, to be in our power. So we don't really have good role models for how to make this shift from models, relationship models that we've basically as a human race have followed forever,
mm-hmm.
suddenly having authentic connection and authentic power. So I think that's the learning opportunity and the challenge here.
Yeah. And talk a little bit about defensiveness,
Mm-hmm.
because that's where you go when you feel like you need to protect yourself, or when you feel like there is a conflict, you want to like protect yourself. And so you get defensive. Talk about that a little bit, and how people can avoid that.
Yeah, so I wouldn't always say that defensiveness is a bad thing. I think it really depends on who that person on the other side is.
Mm-hmm.
So, sometimes the person really is not somebody you want to show your heart to. You want to just have good boundaries with them and stay away from them. Other times, that defensiveness is really just the result of past hurts. Mm-hmm. And so first of all, I think it's important to distinguish, is there somebody I can trust, yes or no? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it can be hard to even see that if we have had so many negative experiences. So it can sometimes be helpful to have an outside view, somebody who can see the situation maybe a bit more clearly than we can see them when we're in the midst of it.
Sure.
And then the other thing is to find a safe environment to practice being vulnerable and letting, the guards down over time. And to have compassion with ourselves and understand it's not going to happen from one day to the next. It's a process.
Yeah.
So one very interesting, teaching that I found really interesting that I got from one of my teachers was that wounds that were created in relationship can only be healed in relationship. So if there's a defensiveness that originated in a relationship, and it doesn't, even matter where it comes from, if it's from the parents or from a previous partner, that it can only be healed by being in another relationship, whether that's a therapeutic one or a friendship or, whatever it is.
Yeah. Because you have to be around people. You're interacting.
Yeah.
We're not isolated. We don't live isolated. So that makes total sense. So tell us a little bit about your proven system that you have.
Yeah. So the first thing that I always do with people is to help them get really clear on their goals, and not just in terms of relationship, but as regards their entire lives, because oftentimes that can really have an impact on our relationship.
Yes. For sure.
And claiming what we really want is amazingly powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I have one example that I like to bring up because I think it's just such a perfect example how getting clear on our goals can really help us. So I was talking to somebody and she had a gazillion different goals. And then she got really clear on wanting to pay off her debt being her number one goal for the next year. And the next time we spoke, which was a month later, she had just paid off her entire debt.
Wow.
Within, like a month, not a year. And just all through getting really clear on her goals.
That's great.
So that's always where I like to start.
Yeah.
Now, typically, when we claim goals that we really love and want, the first thing that comes up is a lot of fear.
Mm-hmm. How am I going to get there?
Yeah, exactly, right? And actually, the fear is a good thing, generally, because it shows that we care about that topic.
Yes.
So kind of like learning to distinguish between fear that really wants to warn us and fear, that kind of indicates that we're on the right path. So there's a way in which we can be in relationship with our fear too that drastically reduces our fear. So, sometimes people on a scale of 1 to 10 have a fear that's an 11 or a 12 or, which is basically panic. Yeah. And by really listening to that fear and being with that fear and listening to the wisdom of that fear, oftentimes the fear actually goes down quite a lot. So let's say, from an 8 to a 5 or to a 4. And the thing is that relationships can bring up a lot of fear. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This intimacy with another person can be really scary.
Yeah. You're exposing your whole your soul, right?
Yeah. And what if they leave us, or what if they don't like us?
Right.
So learning how to be with our fear is really important also for relationship success. And another thing is not only what if they leave us, but what if they stay with us? What if they love us?
Right.
What if they want to continue to be with us? Because that can also be really scary.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned something about the wisdom in the fear. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I think oftentimes we think of fear as something that wants to stop us. And what I've learned is that's actually not the truth, but it just wants to warn us.
Mm.
And once we listen to that warning, we can actually go ahead. So an example is, I'm going to take the same client again, who wanted to do something that involved setting up a school in a developing country.
Oh.
And there was a lot of fear related to that. And as we listened to that fear, it turned out that fear actually was very warranted, because she was afraid of getting physically attacked if she were to do this thing that really, was challenging to the culture.
Right.
And but by listening to that fear, she could come up with ideas for how to deal with that challenge appropriately. So she can still continue to go forward, but she's better prepared for any challenges that can arise. And that's sort of like the wisdom that can lie in our fear.
Yes, that makes total sense. I like listening to you talk about that, because that's a point that doesn't usually get brought up, right? We think of fear as something being bad, but you're so right. There is wisdom in it, because it's like I say, listen to the whispers that tell us what we need to know. So fear is like, that's a great way of thinking of it, as a warning sign. Thank you for that. That's great.
You're very welcome.
Haven't heard that before. So talk about when somebody gets really upset. What can we do? I mean, let's say, I do something, and, somebody else has this past history of having a different memory, and it triggers them to fly off the handle or whatever. And I'm thinking, like, I don't know anything about, I don't understand it. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. So, I mean, it obviously depends on who's getting triggered, right? If the other person's getting triggered that I'm not working with, then a challenge is to find a time where the other person can really express what they felt. And that within the person listening to them takes a lot of inner, centeredness and staying in their strength so they don't get triggered.
Yeah.
But once they do that, oftentimes it really de-escalates the situation.
Yes. Yeah. And then that's true. But I notice that when I get angry, I do. I admit it. Right? We're all human. I forget. My brain is not connected.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think there may be some biology to it.
Yeah.
But I think what's more interesting is how do we relate to that anger?
Yeah.
So I think like a flash of anger is not necessarily a problem, because it can indicate to us that our boundaries have been violated, that we want to change something. So it's all about how do we respond to that anger. And if it's an anger that persists, let's say, like after 15 minutes we're still angry, oftentimes what helps is to ask, what did I want that I did not get? Because it shifts from feeling in a victim state, they did this to me and they shouldn't have, and how dare they, and to, oh, actually what I wanted from you is to be careful with my favorite mug and to not let it drop, please.
Right.
So,
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, because I think a lot of times when anger sparks like that, it's because we feel unheard. We feel
yeah.
unheard or unseen, or yeah, our needs are not somehow met. And, we can't be mind readers, right?
Mhm.
So that makes so much sense. That's great. Um,
And I mean, if I can add one more thing,
sure. Yeah, please.
Oftentimes our current triggers are actually part of a much bigger pattern.
Mm,
So, what's really a small thing in the moment can be so challenging for us because it's this deep pattern stemming way back when.
yeah.
So in order to have things go more smoothly, eventually I found that it's really helpful to take a look at these deeper patterns.
Mm-hmm. How
And
do you do that?
yeah, so the good thing is that challenges we experience are oftentimes fractal patterns. So, for example, if there's somebody who had very critical parents, it can show up in all areas of their life. So they can be self-critical, then they maybe have a spouse who's verbally abusive. They're not really taking care of their body. They have clients or coworkers who are very challenging. So it shows up in all areas of their lives, but it goes back to one core event.
Yeah.
And if you work with a core event, generally all the other areas also benefit and get healed.
How do you get to that core event?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, I listen to the client stories
Mm-hmm.
and to what events they found important in their lives. And oftentimes, it's events which had a really deep impact on them. It doesn't even have to be something big or that we would see as bad. It can be something like, somebody, not a parent, forgetting to pick them up.
Right. Yeah. Just traumatic at that time.
Yeah, but if you're like 5 or something, it can be really heartbreaking, even though they did the best they could and just, had so much else to do.
Yeah.
And to look at that event and then to use the appropriate tools to get back whatever strength we lost in that moment.
That's great. Well, it sounds like you're very knowledgeable in this area, which is, I think, very well, much needed. It's a different view than going to a psychologist, right? It's a different, more empowering view of how to take care of your life and how to go through these different challenges. Is there anything, we're almost ready to wrap up, time goes just so fast. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to this interview?
I think, I wanted to leave one key distinction for evaluating how we deal with relationship conflicts, and that's the distinction between comfort and growth. So one thing that we can always ask ourselves is whenever we find ourselves in a relationship conflict, is, are we using that situation for comfort, doing the same old, or are we actually using it to try to grow?
Yeah.
Together with our partner or by ourselves, whatever it means, but so that we can actually learn from the event.
Yeah, I love that. And that is the when you are stepping out of your pattern of what you normally do, that's when you're able to really jump. That's when you're really able to like stand up for yourself and feel empowered, feel like you are growing. So I love that you brought that up. And I hear you have a free gift for our listeners.
Yeah. So I thought maybe the most helpful thing that I can offer is just to offer some of my time. So you can go to my website and book a free 20-minute session with me.
Wow.
So we can continue this conversation one-on-one.
That's very, very generous.
Mhm.
And so what is your email? And I'm going to also put it on the Empowered Living Facebook group page, but
Mhm.
in case people are watching this on YouTube, what is your
Yeah.
email?
It's transformingintoauthenticity.com.
Perfect.
And then you can just click through to find the section where you can get the free gift. And you can also take a look at a lot of my articles. I have a bunch of different articles on love and relationships.
Ah, I've seen one you wrote for the Elephant Journal.
Yeah. Oh, and my email address is contact@transformingintoauthenticity.com.
Awesome. Oh, great. And we will put both of those up on the Empowered Living page. So if you want to join the Empowered Living Facebook group, then you can look at the link that will somewhere on this video, around the video.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Bere, for coming on and taking your time. And I know that this is something that we've been wanting to do together.
Yes.
I'm glad we finally got to do this. It's been months, right?
Yeah.
So great. Well, thank you so much. And I think I learned a lot, and I know that the listeners have learned a lot. And so thank you all. Thank you, listeners. Thank you for being here, and have a great night.
Thank you, Lisa.
Welcome.
Bye-bye.